Alright, for this project, friends, we're going to paint this drum table, give it a fresh new coat of paint to match its new decor. I'm going to start off with using burlap. Of course, you can tell that I used Dixie Belle's Gray Boss first, just to block any kind of bleed through that I might get. Taped off the hardware on the wheels at the base, and just giving it a nice, clean, easy coat of burlap on the base and also on the top. I did separate the two pieces. It just made it easier to work with. You can see I'm using a large Lazy Susan for the top, and just makes it a lot easier so I'm not working on the floor or working too high, and let me focus on the two pieces individually. Be sure when you're working on a large top, use a mister bottle, work thin layers, don't rush into putting thick coats of paint on it. You want to do it right, keep it nice and simple. We're going to work on blending for this project. I want each panel to have its own blending section, and I'm going to use not only blending but also shading, and I'll get to that here in a minute. First thing I'm going to do is put a second coat of burlap on there, and I'm working very wet, and get the tops, the sides for sure. I want to make sure they're a nice smooth coat. Don't put it on too thick. Lightly brush over any areas that you feel is getting too thick. Then I'm going to come in there with drop cloth. This is going to be my highlight color. Notice I only put it on a little bit in the section where the hardware is going to go. And then I'm using an old oval small brush as my, I'll call it blending brush. This is where I'm feathering the two colors together. So I'm working two colors together, wet on wet. Just use a light touch. I'm not putting much pressure at all. I'm just disguising and fading out those brush strokes. You can use other brushes, maybe Dixie Belle, the Belle brush might work, something with more of a faded, soft edge to it. So I'm working on another panel, just going ahead and putting in that burlap one more time, smoothing it out. Usually I'll mist if needed, and just go in there with that highlight color, not too much, slightly faded in there with the brush that I've applied drop cloth with. And now I'm going to go in there. Notice I have a damp rag that I'm using kind of to discharge any extra paint off my brush. Soft, light, feathery touch. Right here I'm probably putting 2%, 5% pressure, fading out those edges, hiding any brush strokes. It's a really lovely look. So this is really simple blending. On the base of the table, I'm coming in with burlap again, going to be blending just kind of a highlight around this section here. You may not see it too well once the table stood up, but I thought it'd be a nice little touch to have a little bit of a glow right there. So I'm using a smaller Lazy Susan underneath the base of this base, and going around, applying, slightly fading. Notice I'm only working on the top section. I'll come back in with burlap and do the lower section in just a moment. So just fade it. It really does help to have a Lazy Susan so I can spin it around. Mist as needed. If the paint's sticky, it's probably not wet enough, so be sure to keep that misting bottle handy. Alright, so I'm putting a little bit more drop cloth where I last left off so that I can blend into burlap. So just get that in there. I did not mist because I don't want to get any mist on the previous blended section. So I'm working quickly. That's really one of the keys to blending, is working quickly. So I'm putting burlap in there, and then I'm going to start just slowly working those two colors together. Not the finished soft blending, but just enough to kind of start working them together. Kind of hard not to get in the way there. And then I'm going to get my blending brush, which again is an oval small, and just light feathery touch. I did not mist, again, working quickly. If you can't blend quickly, you might try a different section that's a little easier to work with. There are other ways to do this blending. You could put burlap all the way on the entire section and then come in with your highlight and just work quickly that way. So there's multiple ways. All right, for this section we are going to I'd like to blend from the blue tape to the middle highlight. So I'm going to apply burlap, same treatment I've been doing for the other two sections, burlap, and then come in with drop cloth, blend those together. Again, just creating a bit of a highlight and some interest to the base instead of just basically a one color approach. Now that the burlap is done, I'm coming back in with drop cloth, and this is where the highlight is going to be towards the bottom of each leg. So just slowly work that in. If you touch the burlap, it's not the end of the world. You are going to come back and slightly blend that anyway. So just block that color in quickly, mist as needed, and I'll also use my blending brush to refine that. And I'll use the same principle on all four leg posts. Just disguise that brush stroke, soften that transition, and that's really all I needed to do. Now for this part, I'm coming in with what I'm describing as shading. I'm using Dixie Belle's Dyke Brown Glaze, and I'm going to put it just inside the decorative sections of each leg, and I'll also do that on the drum tabletop in just a moment. But this is creating, again, more contrast. Notice I'm going to use the small flat, and I'm just going to fade that out. As you brush down, just lift the pressure and just slowly fade that out. Use my brush, remove some excess, and then I'm going to come back with my wet rag and just wipe off anything that's on the top parts of each leg. And I think that really makes a dramatic look. Notice I did not go all the way down. I don't want to get into the light area where drop cloth is at. All right, for this section, we're going to do it just inside the middle trim point. If you'll notice on the right part of the shot here, I already did one panel. So I was using my hand to keep the mist from getting on my previous work. So keep that in mind. You don't want to get misting water particles on already finished work. It'll leave spots, and that's not the look I'm going for. So here I'm just using one of Dixie Belle's artist brushes to apply a thin section of this glaze. And now I'm using that 1-inch brush again just to softly vignette that look. I did miss, so it's going to move smooth, it's going to be wet, but that's okay. And notice I'm using a rag to remove any excess. If you ever get to the point you feel like you put too much down, just use that rag and dab off any extra. And you can use all kinds of brushes to soften this up. I'm just using the 1-inch because it fits that section really well. I did not top coat yet. You really don't need to. If you're working wet, you'll have plenty of time to work this and soften it out. This is an optional element, but this gives me kind of a vignette, a darker vignette around the edge. You could do a 3-color blend, but I think it's a little bit more work to try and control 3 colors. And I think this looks really dramatic and keeps it classy. I'm using my wet rag to remove any excess around the raised surfaces. And once this dries, we'll top coat it all and put the hardwood back on, and it's just going to be there. It is. You can see it before and after, and it just really has a nice modern look. The client was happy to have it back and looking good in their space. So I hope that's helpful to you. Be experimental, have fun, and enjoy Dixie Belle's products. It's really going to enhance your creative work on furniture and other home decor.